o'clock. Now, while British politics is hardly having a quiet summer, the Republican Party is giving us equal amounts of drama in the States. This week alone saw a Trump arch-enemy beaten in Wyoming, and the former president have hundreds of millions of dollars of support roll in after the FBI raided his residence, and one of his financial chiefs plead guilty to tax crimes. So where does this all leave Republicans in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election? Well, Erol Morkoc is the vice chair of Republicans Abroad UK. He joins me now. Erol, it does from this distance look as if there's a lot of ferrets fighting in a lot of sacks at the moment. Is that an unfair characterisation?
There is a lot of infighting, I would say. Certainly, that is to be expected, though, as we get into a contentious campaign season. Whether or not that's unusual, though, I don't exactly think it stands out as something to be, concerned about.
In terms of the future of the Republican Party, it's worth noting that of the 10 House Republicans that voted against President Trump and what happened at the Capitol riots, 4 have retired. 4 have been beaten by pro-Trump candidates, other Republicans that have beaten them out in the primaries to be the candidate again, even though they're sitting members of the House, and 2 have survived. I mean, it does slightly look to us here as if the party's still cleaving to the last guy rather than looking to who's the next person to shape the Republican Party in their own image and likeness.
I would totally concur with that, because Trump, for us and our constituents, is not the last guy. He's the upcoming candidate for our party. When you look at the fact that 80%...
You think that? You think he'll be the candidate?
Oh, I'm confident. I'm very confident. We've spoken about it in Orlando. Certainly, it's something that you have to keep in mind. The way U.S. campaign finance laws work, once you declare as a candidate, a lot of things change. For example, if he'd said he was the official candidate, the GOP could no longer help fund his legal campaigns against lawsuits because you can't declare favoritism. So it's a tactical... there's a tactical waiting period to announce, but he will be the candidate, barring some sort of they found the nuclear secrets in Melania's wardrobe. Turns out he was a KGB agent. Outside of that, he will be our candidate for sure. And I think that the fact that these people won, you have to keep in mind, he defeated the sort of Republican Democrat oligarchy. He wasn't a Republican. He was a registered Democrat until 2009. So he didn't have the support of over half of his party. This time around, with the people who've been, cycled out in the last 2 to 4 years, the new crop, the people who are coming in, the young people, the people who I know, people like, the Jackson LaMare or some of the other candidates that are coming up, they are going to be Trump candidates. And the House is going to be not only Republican, but it's going to be Trump Republican skewed. So that definitely is something that we see and we're quite happy about.
But I guess one of the questions for people around the world is when you talk about Trump Republicanism, you look at some of the things that Trump did and his policy positions for his time in the Oval Office for his 4 years. And actually, there isn't a huge amount of intellectual coherence for them in terms of the way he reached out a hand of friendship to Kim Jong-un in North Korea, but in other ways sort of raised the kind of industrial wars with China at the same time. Sometimes it looked as if there wasn't a coherent narrative as to what Trumpism was. It was just what he himself felt like on any particular issue.
In some ways, that's a very good way to approach it. I would say that it would be incumbent upon us as observers of this to look at the fact that Mr. Trump was the first businessman to ever be elected to that office. Before then, it had been only statesmen and war heroes. So Donald Trump specifically didn't live his life by an ideology. In fact, if you live your life by an ideology, it's going to be very easy to debate you because one will know all of your viewpoints. Donald Trump was the first person on the Republican side in 2016, after some of these horrific mass shootings, to say, hey, something needs to be done. I don't care that some 19-year-old has the right. He was the first person to push back against the NRA, despite receiving a lot of money from the NRA. He was a candidate who was unencumbered because he didn't have any, payola that he owed people. He wasn't like Mr. Biden, who said, you give me money, you can come down to the White House. Donald Trump will take your money, but he certainly doesn't mean that he's going to buy your ideology. So for the first time, you had a transparent president who wasn't beholden to a single ideology, but was fluid. You want to make peace? You want to stop having rockets? Well, I'm going to have to go talk to Mr. Kim Jong-un. You want to, have a robust trade deals that isolate China, something that now Joe Biden and the European Union are realizing when you look at China's behavior around Taiwan. You look at what happened in the Nord Stream pipeline, the warnings. We kept begging NATO, begging the Germans. Now they're saying the European Central Bank will have to spend $1 trillion to rebuild Ukraine.
Errol, can I ask you something? I mean, because you sound like you're a fully paid up member of, wanting Trump for president, not just because he's a Republican candidate, because you want him to be the Republican candidate. And the question I'm kind of keen to ask you is, when people say that he debased the office of president, when he used to retweet stuff calling Hillary Clinton a skank, or calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe, or being personally offensive to people, when he changed protocols or laws or pushed up against things, or said stuff that he wasn't supposed to say. What do you feel about that? Because a lot of Americans that I know, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they appreciate the office of the president as well as the person that sits in it.
In a different political climate, I can understand what you're saying, but you have a situation where the American people were, fed up. From top to bottom, they were upset. And Donald Trump came out and he said a lot of the things that people would say off the cuff. And you know what? A lot of people in our party said, we don't really care about the mean tweets because it's an honest look. Now, I'm an immigrant to America from a Muslim country. I never once felt that Donald Trump was trying to target me unfairly. We have Trump Tower in Istanbul. When I'm doing business in Dubai, there's Trump golf courses. You have to look at the greater picture of the man. And to condemn somebody for being brash or uncouth, I understand that. But he wasn't elected to be presidential, and he said that quite a bit. He was elected to represent the forgotten man and woman. And if he had run a very conventional Mitt Romney-esque campaign, quite frankly, he wouldn't have been here. To reiterate, he completely destroyed the entire neocon backing of the Republican Party. Keep in mind, that's the party of weapons of mass destruction, wars in Iraq, wars in Afghanistan. The American people were sick and tired. And so that's how
and all the question marks over his mental state at his age. And you know what? I don't disregard that the same questions are being asked of Joe Biden. Because of his age, because he would lose his place when he was talking about things, where he would say things that either he knew or didn't know were untrue, or that he couldn't follow his own thought process. You think that 6 years from now, he's still going to be mentally acute enough to be president?
Well, I have to push back and say that while we have a lot of respect for President Biden, I certainly don't think that what we're seeing, him go through is anything compared to Mr. Trump, who is sharp, witty, and on the ball. Now, you bring up a good point. At what point do people get too old to serve in this country? But we also have the fact that this is a free and democratic country. If the American people obviously decided that Joe Biden was of sound mind and capable to lead this country, then I personally have no fear that Donald Trump maintains a higher mental acuity at this point in his life.
Okay, well, look, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Erol Morkoc, Vice Chair of Republicans Abroad UK. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Now, it might not be making a huge